And try to screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up.
And welcome to the This Week at Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino. I'm editor of This Week at Worcester, here with Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is president of Hollywood Film Group. He is executive producer of Manage Media. He is a valued contributor to This Week in Worcester. We are back, John. 1 week later, as promised.
We're here every week. We show up and we do the hard work of politics here in the city of Worcester. That's what we're doing week in and week out. Just carrying our bucket and scooping, putting stuff down.
I know it's hard work, but it's grinding.
It is grinding. I mean, this is the hard part right here. Is the time when it's like not really the things that everybody likes to do. It's not. We're not having like a weekly thing. It's just it's just you and me, and and then Hank on Hank's show, kind of doing that that weekly in and out kind of regular thing. So it's hard. This is a lot of people are not interested in this kind of work right now. You know what I mean? They're doing their summer. Except for Freddie Nathan. Freddie Nathan for mayor. He's always here.
Freddie Nathan for mayor.
That's right.
So we had the 2.0 version of the No Kings protest on the 4th, on Friday. Smaller turnout than the last one. I think that's to be expected after, a couple weeks after a protest 1 and 2 on a holiday. I think that, I don't think the smaller crowd's indicative of anything really. I think the Telegram said 400 people is what organizers were saying. They were saying 2,000 plus last time, but again, I don't, given the circumstances, I don't really think that that's indicative of anything. But again, seemed to be well organized, and I think for a holiday, decent turnout.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people have to live their regular lives, right? And I think that's something that always happens. I remember when I was a kid watching the Walter Cronkite stuff from Vietnam, that era. What's the Good Night and Good Luck guy that George Clooney likes?
Oh God.
Whoever remembers whoever the Good
God, why can't I remember? It wasn't Cronkite. It was
he did the Munich Olympics thing, and
Edward R. Murrow. Good God.
Ed Murrow, right. So if you go back and look at some of that stuff, there was some interesting things that they used to do where they would cover a war, a real war. And I'm not saying that modern war isn't real, but Vietnam era and war in other parts of the world are very, very different than modern American wars. That's part of the reason why I think Ukraine and the stuff that's happening in Israel and Palestine has been so vivid for people, is because they're seeing regular death, and that was kind of normal during Vietnam. So Vietnam people were dying. They were publishing lists every day because 500,000 American soldiers died. It wasn't like a couple. It was a ton.
58,000.
58,000. I'm sorry. It's 500,000 is the Civil War.
No, 500,000 is World War II. I don't know what the Civil War was.
But it was just a ton of people compared to the Iraq, the Gulf War era wars, and Afghanistan and stuff like that. And you see when like one soldier dies now, how like it gets really crazy. But the interesting part that I find that I think about journalism, and I think this kind of relates to you and me, is that there's still time when you can see a story of like a farmer in the middle of a war, like farming, like bringing his bringing his cow to the to the get water, and
In a war.
in a war, and doing the farmer stuff, because how do the soldiers get fed? They still got to get fed, right? This is like, how they still got to have places to stay, and there's still people in the military who do that kind of stuff, who do cleaning and cooking, and like the functional part of people's lives. Also, something I think about all the time is that in the middle of like that kind of scenario, people go to sleep still, right? So people have to sleep, and so I think that this 4th of July versus, remember last year it rained most of the 4th of July last year. And I think that with all of the constant breathless coverage, even in our local kind of sphere, I think people probably were like, I want to have a cookout. And they went to their cookout, and they had a hot dog, and they had a hamburger, and they had a whatever. Well, although this is Worcester too, so there was some pernil, there was some empanadas out there. You know what I mean? Because we have a Latin community here in our city, so there wasn't just not just hot dogs and hamburgers. Um, and that I think that people need a break sometimes. I do. I think need a break. I work in the film industry, Tom, and you know what? The number one industry during the recession, the Great Depression of the 20s, and then again the Great Recession of the 2010s, the number one industry, it's movies. Movies are always going because people need an escape, from the world. They want.
Or the government wants to feed them propaganda.
Sure. There's that too. There's definitely that too. But I would say that often the people who are making films were definitely openly critiquing some folks in the war. I actually think now this gets into like my film study stuff and like how deep I go into like making film. But if you watch Irving Berlin's White Christmas, right? So Irving Berlin's White Christmas. Now, in the context, because again, remember the timing of the movie, the people that were in the movie, the USO stuff, the war and stuff, it was a scathing at the time rebuke of Washington and how they handled soldiers and soldiers coming home and that kind of stuff, right? So it was ripping the government, but it was ripping it in the way that they were allowed to do back then, which goes to your point about propaganda, right? Because they couldn't really come out and say stuff because they would have been at the time, McCarthy would have come down on them. They would have been, marked a communist or something like that. So there's time for entertainment to be the place where people escape. So I just don't think that everybody wants to protest every day. And in this case, again, and this is not a critique because I get yelled at by the group, but I just want to say this out loud. It was a scheduled, planned event where they kind of told them where they were going, and there's pop-up tents, and there's people just kind of walking in this area. They did walk in the street at one point, but I mean that is elite. That's a right in our country to do that. And it was kind of like do your thing and go home, and that's kind of what happened. So I think that's Pinchos. Oh man, now I'm hungry. Um, and I think that's what probably they're facing. They're dealing with people. People are tired. People are looking for results, and then you're seeing at the national level, at least the folks that I guess people are kind of coalescing around who they're protesting against, winning, right? So, the what's the name for this thing? The big beautiful bill. Such ridiculousness. But anyways, I mean, it passed after all kinds of week-long coverage of this senator wasn't going to vote for it, and these three people were going to hold out, and blah 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 blah. But in the end, the funding bill, which if you truly look at it, we were talking about this off air a little bit. it's a military spending bill, a massive military spending bill that puts a ton of money into the military, and then a ton of money into border security and the ICE department. If I would say the biggest part of the bill is those things, right? So there's some other weird stuff. We'll talk about it as we go through the show, but there's it was definitely like an under the cover of night multi-billion-dollar military spending bill. That's
yeah,
really
I mean, a lot of military spending, and I mean, the funding for ICE and other immigration activities is massive. I mean, but the question becomes, can they hire the people to do it?
yeah. So I mean, I don't know that they can. I mean, you and I have worked a little bit on some stories, and there's been some national stories about them hiring contractors. And I can't go too far into the story, but basically they don't have enough internal personnel to staff what they're trying to do.
And they're pulling people from other agencies as well.
Yeah. And we've seen that here in Worcester. We saw people and just in the Eureka Street incident, there was ICE, there was CBP, there was HSI agents, which is home security investigators, or at least people. I shouldn't say that. There was people who had those markings on them. So whether they were or not, that's another question. But there's definitely a lot of that happened. ATF, which is weird, you know what I mean? Because the ATF has a specific focus. You would think it's not a lady with a cell phone cord, but hey, gotta get those dangerous criminals off the street, Tom. We gotta get them,
Yeah.
dude. Gotta get them.
So I think if not leading it, Worcester Indivisible was part of that protest again.
Yeah.
Good for them. They've done good work here the last month.
I think so. I think they've definitely grown their movement. There's no doubt about that, and there's definitely been a bigger turnout. I also think I don't know that they had any guest speakers. You know what I mean? Like there was no Jim McGovern at this thing. I don't think so. I think that at the last one they had Jim McGovern come out. They had some other speakers. So I mean that might have driven attendance too. People do still want to hear from our local electeds, and so I think that might have driven attendance the last one. But also the 4th of July holiday, it just is what it is. People want to eat hot dogs. And it was on a Friday, so people got out of work early, right?
Well, people didn't work. Most people didn't work that day, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they got out of work early on Thursday, so people were chilling from the day before,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Jurassic Park came out this week too, so I mean, people got to go see Jurassic Park.
It's the first I've heard of it. The city finished something way ahead of schedule, like weeks ahead of schedule.
Yeah, they did.
There's something you had taken an interest in, the playground, the rehabilitation of the playground at Elm Park. Was scheduled to run through July, and it started last month. So, it was going to take a big chunk of the summer time while this playground was going to be, being rebuilt or rehabilitated. And they targeted end of July, and then it's done.
Yeah, it's done. It's done in advance, which is great. I'm not. I think that the people that talked about it openly and publicly, I think that they had a real effect on it. I mean, the last week they were working hard. I was over there a couple times. I walked there a lot. I walked there by myself. I walked there with Leanne sometimes when she's here in the office, and so I really enjoy that park, and I spent a lot of time there. It's a beautiful park, and it's well maintained. I think it's well maintained. It has the problems that every park in the city has, right? Which is, people throw trash, and then there's some folks that are struggling that are living there, and so I mean, there's those two things. But generally during the daytime, and especially on the weekends, it's packed always, like always packed, and so they like kind of moved that project along, and I think. Again, the protest at Blythewood Park that we saw with David Webb and George Russell and the drone getting smashed and all that stuff that happened, I think that the city may have made it. They decided they weren't going to put as much publicity on the reopening of this park versus that. So people are already using it, and I was just there today. There was hundreds of kids there. There's cars lined up and down the street even right now. I was just driving around like about a half hour, 40 minutes ago, and the street is packed on Russell Street. So I think people want to use the parks, and I think that the city council was a little upset with the administration because both Jenny Pasillo and George Russell had said that they did not know about that timeline of this park. And it's such a central park to the city that I think that there was some pressure on the administration, and good for them for getting it done. Good for them for getting the right contractor. It's cool. The new playground is cool. There's a bunch of these like toy things that you can like play that have steel balls in them, and it like interacts, so there's that kind of stuff. There's like some funky swings, and then there's this cool thing that's covered. I don't know what word to call it other than apparatus, and several people reached out after reading my article for you and said, what's an apparatus? I don't know what else to call it. It's an apparatus. It's got a fan on top. It's got 4 fans, and it's got shade built into it. And you just got to go to the park and see it for yourself. I don't know what else to tell you other than to go see it. But the ground where the kids are playing is made of this like bouncy material, and it's really cool. It's really, really cool. I like it. And so I kind of hope that someday all the walkways could have that material on it. It's really nice. It's really soft, and obviously the kids jumping around on it, it's like not damaging to their little bodies. And so an older body here would approve totally of them doing the walkways, which are all cement and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that they heard, and I think that they moved a little quicker, and I think that shows that can be done. Again, I've talked about this. C says she loves the squishy ground. I think that that the way to get things done in the city of Worcester is to push publicly consistently. You can't just say it one time. You can't be a person who just like pops up, screams, and then goes away. You have to be someone who consistently puts public spotlight onto things, and that will affect how the city does stuff.
Basically,
Yeah.
at least in a lot of senses, it seems that way. Speaking of city council, no meeting on Tuesday. Another week away from having a meeting. This 1 month meeting in July, 1 meeting in August, which they do every year. When they return week after this, rather. There will be 5 weeks since any new business has been heard, because the protests pushed one meeting basically to take up a second meeting, and then the evaluation, and then weeks off. Look, I don't have any problem with anybody taking some time away, but I mean, it's still irritating to me that some council spent a week just beating the tar out of these protesters.
Yeah,
and because they impacted the important business they have to do, business so important that they can wait 5 weeks. I mean, come on.
Apparently, there's nothing going on for 5 weeks, and this goes back to that argument again. The mayor can schedule meetings whatever he wants. Technically, he could have a meeting every day if he wanted to. Now that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
It's an emergency meeting, and that's supposed to be for specific reasons. But yeah, I mean, nonetheless, they all collectively have the ability to set their own schedule at the beginning of the term, and they go with the same schedule every year, really. And this is not uncommon. They do this every year, but just in context, it's irritating to me.
It is, because they made this big stink about the protesters ruining one council meeting being a problem, and now we know why. The reason why, Tom, is that they were getting ready for their vacation, and they were gonna have this long break after the city manager's evaluation, and they wanted to end on a high note and go out on a high note, because it's election season and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to have controversy. They don't want to have issues the rest of the year. And if you look at it, truly, that meeting after the protest meeting was the last real functional city council meeting of the year. And now I know that we have city councilors who watch the event, so they're going to be like, "What do you mean? I do work." Here's what I'm saying. There's one meeting in July on the 15th. Then there's one meeting in August, which is not scheduled yet, but usually it's 30 days after the one in July, right? That's usually how it goes.
It's scheduled. It's second week August, I think.
Oh, it's second week August? Okay.
Yeah,
I just
like a
didn't
month
see
later.
it on the portal on the city's website. I didn't see it up there yet. So, but So at least that makes sense because the agenda is not issued until after the minutes and all that stuff. But so those two meetings, and then we have the primary, and then we're back to regular councils because there's no the on the primary it's a Tuesday. There's no city council meeting on the voting day, right? So
Right.
then we're back to regular council business, but then the primary will have been kind of sorted out. And then what it does is there's really only two meetings. If someone who is a candidate, not an incumbent, and a candidate for council or candidate for school committee wants to make an impact at those meetings that are broadcast to the whole city, they only have two chances left the rest of the year. That's July and August, because after that the primary ends, and then there's only going to be about 6 or 7 meetings. I think it's 6 between the primary and the general election. And in the 6 meetings before the general election, there will be nothing of consequence at all that will be allowed to change anything by the majority, because those 6 votes are going to hold strong and they're going to do everything in lockstep going through to the general election. Then after the general election, it's celebration time. So whoever wins, it's going to be, oh, congratulations. There's a whole week of that, and then it's George Russell's retirement party. So we're gonna get weeks of George Russell getting keys to the city and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then Jenny's leaving, right? And so then we're at the inauguration, and then the city council's work. So realistically, you won't see real dug-in work from the body. And I'm not talking about individual councils, because some individual councils will continue to push for certain things. But as a body, there will be nothing of substance until January, which is really, really frustrating in a again, not only is it a part-time council, but it's really a part-time administration of the city. But the city manager, in the meantime, continues to work all the time, right? And so this is really where the gap that we've been talking about between the election of our elected people and the actual governance of the city, there's a huge disconnect, because we don't even get to talk as a body of the people of Worcester for weeks and weeks and weeks on end during this regularly scheduled. And you're right, it is the yearly schedule. This kind of sucks, Tom. It really is hyper limiting on the voices of the people of Worcester.
And I wonder, are we going to get this alleged report from the police department on what they agree with in the DOJ report? Are we going to get that ever? Because that was now, what, 2 months ago they said they were going to come with that? And it's just, I guess we're all sleeping on it.
Yeah, I guess so. It definitely wasn't at the public safety committee meeting, right? And and here's the thing, Tom. It isn't this city council? Well, didn't the mayor promise 5 public meetings of the city council in relation to that? Is that going to happen?
Special meetings do not happen on the regular schedule. They had one that was on the regular schedule.
Schedule those for?
Never happened.
That's never going to happen. So I mean, and then they wonder why we're frustrated with them. They right. I know we have friends of the show that watch the show regularly and friends of us, and they ask me, like, how, is it how's your relationship with Counselor so and so and Counselor so? To be honest with you, my relationships with them, for the most part, are fine. When I see them, I say hi. We say hi. I talk to them about general stuff sometimes. How's the weather? How's your kids? How's it going? That kind of jazz. And the controversy, goes away kind of in between. And that really lends itself to people feeling like they don't care, because they don't really have to. There's no mechanism other than I guess, growing local media, local independent media like us, to hold them accountable. But even then, it's only the two of us. We can't write 17,000 articles. You know what I mean? Although we're trying. We're out there. We're out there, baby, doing the hard work of making the announcements for them about the playground.
And look, I don't. I mean, I get. I mean, I've said before, I get along with most of them. I've gotten to know most of them, and how I feel about them personally is sometimes not as you'd expect, given the political slant, right? But I mean, there's people that I like very much on council that I wouldn't vote for. but they're good people. They're nice people. They're enjoyable people to be around. But when it comes down to the politics, it's just we see the world in a different way. And it's generally the kind of neoliberal, post-Reaganite Democrat, right?
Yeah.
It's the neoliberalism that has infected our political system in both parties, and we're only allowed to have two. Generally has them see the world in a broad sense, both parties, in the same kind of way. This idea, this kind of right-wing economic idea that investment is the product of excessive capital and not of opportunity. If rich people have money, well, they'll just invest it in stuff. Doesn't matter if there's nobody to buy the stuff.
What's interesting? I think I've been thinking about this a little bit. If you strip away Trump's rhetoric, he's just a traditional middle of the road Republican. He's doing the same thing that every middle of the road Republican president does, which is attaches to everything more military spending, right? And then cutting Medicare and Social Security. It's like a history of that specific thing. So if you go back to Nixon, at least, right? So Nixon really was the first Republican president to kind of go after the entitlements of Medicare and Social Security, which were all World War II era, things that were kind of created, right? And so then that became like a tradition with Nixon, and they've all kind of tried to do it since. And then the same, here's a perfect example. Do you know what every single president since Nixon has tried to do? They've all tried to cut the money for the Corporation for Public Broadcast. All of them. Every single one has tried to do this. And every single time they can't, because I don't know if anybody realizes this. The big controversy that you've seen about the Corporation for Public Broadcast, which is the primary funding source for NPR, PBS, those kind of public broadcast systems. By statute, they're funded 4 years in advance, right? So the money that they just voted again out for NPR isn't until 2029. So technically, whoever the next president is or the next Congress, they can get it back because the funding was already done for this period of time in advance by the Biden administration, who, to their credit, like most Democratic presidents, kind of knew that was going to happen and kind of funded those things out in advance. The new stuff where he's taking over the board of the National Institute of Arts and the map place, which just boggles my mind. That's new. That's a new thing. But the traditional kind of move towards less public, facing federal programs and more military spending is kind of traditional Republican stuff. And then it's not really, it's just clothed in this xenophobic populist weirdo nonsense that really I think publicly I saw a poll the other day that was put out by a Republican pollster, and the ICE stuff, 40% of Republicans are negative about it. That's a big number. That means that if you include independents, it's like 80%, Democrats 80% against the ICE raids that they've been doing around the country. That's a huge amount. So it's almost 60% of the total American population is saying that they're against these raids. And so that's not a normal polling number, as you know, Tom. Like anything above 52, that indicates really significant support for something. So in this case, it's negative support. So it feels like those parts of the strategy aren't working. But I think part of it is, Tom, is to try to make permanent some of those traditional Republican stuff by hiding it behind this super controversial, front-facing, aggravating kind of stuff, right? I get it. I know people fear even worse behind there, and I'm not saying that that's not possible. But what I am saying is I wonder if a strategy has been concocted by these idiots that if we just act as stupid as possible, but meanwhile we're getting through our permanent, the wall. Like he got $100 billion for the wall or something like that in this bill.
They still won't build it.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the bill, one last thought. he legitimately took personal shots at Musk in this bill. Like they cut the subsidy for the space launches.
Yeah.
They like
It's so petty. It's so petty.
they're gonna say
I mean, in that sense,
now.
It's a little funny if it weren't so serious.
It's
that
funny.
he's so petty.
Right. Oh, you're right, because it's a ton of money and it's our money. But I didn't know this until I started reading it. That Elon Musk's all those SpaceX flights, those satellites, he hasn't been paying for them.
He's got more subsidies than anybody ever.
It's crazy. So those launches are free, and there's a bunch of national employees that are working for him. NASA, for all intents and purposes, is working for him in some of these launches. And so we're talking, every launch, it's like I think it was 6.2 million I saw. And so if you go back and look at the history of SpaceX, how many satellites, we don't even realize how many satellites they've launched. Hundreds, thousands. It's an amazing amount of launches. Because not all of them are like the full orbit, right? Some of them are the low orbit. They shoot them
some of that. I mean, that's not only SpaceX though. That's for his internet thing, and that's for
yeah.
It's and I mean, speaking of polling though, it was a recent poll of 60-something% of Democrats want new leadership, and they won't get that, and they won't get that. It'll be the same people.
By the way, Hakeem Jeffries, that guy. He's got to go, dude. Wow, is he terrible? He is terrible.
Oh, him. I mean, the senator from New York who pretends to be the minority leader in the Senate is no better either.
Wow, man, unbelievable.
But you'd think that I mean, look, is it likely to be a Democrat president after this Trump? Probably will be. Probably. And typically, when a Democratic, whenever the party switches when the next president's elected and the party switches, typically that party has the majority in Congress. You'd think that they would rush to repeal all this crap, but they won't. They won't.
And because I think there's some of those things that he's passed they like. He's given them political cover so if they work, you know what I mean. If they work, they can just leave him in. Right. Yeah. So there's all these kind of things. And then, by the way, if you want a specific example from when Obama was president, that ended up being something that all the Republicans accepted, it was kids being able to be on your insurance until they were 26. Right. So a master's degree student, a student who got a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree could stay on their parents' insurance until they were 26.
Till 26. Anybody till 26.
Anybody till 26, but that's the reason why is specifically it was related to college kids, right? But in particular, that became a super popular part of the Obamacare thing. Massive, huge. It's like 90% approval rating is that thing. So if you go and look at when Trump when he started going after Obamacare in his first term, he didn't touch that. That's still in place, even though now what they did go after was the personal mandate, which was a tax. And the Supreme Court called it a tax because it was a tax. And so that particular thing is what they went after. But that got taken out in the tax reconciliation. The same way they're doing this, they did the same thing in his first term, the reconciliation, I forget what it's called, the Tax and Reconciliation Act, whatever, it doesn't matter. They took out that personal mandate. After the Supreme Court called it a tax, they were able to take it out in the tax process. So it's the same thing. Vance. Oh my goodness. If that guy ever becomes president, oh man.
That's not going to happen.
Oh man. Oh man. Actually, I used to say the same thing though when Obama was president about Biden, and it happened. So you never know. You never know. Like the worst possible person. Yeah, they're gonna put them together. So no, I agree with you. I think the Democrats are very cynical, the national leadership, and they have an approach. And I'll look at it this way. David Axelrod, he was a communications guy for Obama, chief of staff, all that other stuff. I watch him. He's on the national news shows all the time. And the last when this I think it was on Saturday, he was on either MSNBC. Oh, he's on Rachel Maddow's show, and he's talking to her, and there's no accountability at all that this is in any way, shape, or form his fault, even though when Biden was clearly struggling, he was one of the ones who came out and was whispering to the press, Kamala Harris isn't ready, right? Saying that kind of stuff, undercutting her, because that's what the Obama people do. And they do that. They undercut all the other people. And so then she really should have ran in the primary, but she was told not to. And that's here. Now we're in this situation when you had a candidate who was not really set up to win because of the change late in the game. And then you had these negatives, and still did pretty good, I think, on her part, considering the road that she had to overcome. Although they did really bad with the money, they did a terrible job spending the money.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything was set up for her to win, and she screwed it up. So I don't know how wonderful a job they did.
No, I'm not saying that she did a good job at all. I'm saying that I don't necessarily fault her alone. I fault the Democratic national leadership in not really being supportive of her earlier primary run, which I think would have at least given us a better assessment of the country, the country's temperature. If we had seen a full primary run and her as the candidate in front of Biden, I just think they propped him up for too long, and it is what it is. He said he was going to be a transition president, and he transitioned us right back to Mr. Trump.
Yes, he did.
That's his
and that's why I don't belong to either of those parties, because they're both trash.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm not a member of either party. I've been unenrolled for a long time, and that's why I think there's another thing too, Tom. So this goes back to the 4th of July thing, and the indivisible folks and the 50-50 folks. They are heavily connected at the national level to the Democratic National Party, and so when I go and I hear tradition, when I hear them couple, xenophobia related stuff, we're going to arrest every brown person and send them out of the country with the new Green Deal, I check out it mentally. I'm gone, because it's like, what does that have to do with solar panels? And by the way, I agree, solar panels and green fuel, there's a lot of stuff to talk about there, good and bad. But what does it have to do with the main issue of the day? If we're saying this guy is Hitler, right, which is what everybody likes to do, then shouldn't we be focused on that stuff, not the Green New Deal, not the insurance companies, not, it's just this traditional Democratic corporate influence continues even in these protests. And so then I find myself like, that I that's probably part of the reason why I don't run for office, Thomas, because I feel like with you and me, we could do better work. With the work I do with Manny, I could do better work, because we can educate people, and hopefully they read the bill themselves. Now it's 900 pages long, so it's a lot. It's tedious too, because it's like, 3.2 shall remove the language such and such to be such and such.
Yeah, right. Because they're amending existing law. Yeah,
you got to go look at the existing law and understand that to get an idea. But there's some things you can say like straight up are bullshit, right? So, for example, the Democrats saying that they cut NASA's funding. No, they didn't. They shifted NASA's funding, so now it's under the Space Force thing that Trump created in his first term, which is really a military branch. And now we can't see how much money it is, right? So, like, now you don't know what the actual budget is, because it's under that kind of black, amorphous thing. If you go look
meanwhile, NASA has invented more things than you could possibly imagine. They've all been licensed out for no money to private sector.
Yeah, I mean, so I read this book, and I forget, it was one of the guys who got fired by Sergey Brin at Google, but he had worked at NASA, and then he went to Google, and part of Google's proprietary algorithm came from research that NASA scientists did. And that's why when you see older satellites, sometimes like new companies will take over an older satellite, and all of a sudden they're able to offer equivalent cell service, is because those satellites were designed by NASA. Those computers were advanced 30 years ago, and they were equivalent to some of the stuff that we see today. Not exactly, but pretty equivalent. Vice Mayor. Thanks, Freddie. But the striking thing about that is that if Google just paid, I think the book said it was 0.01 cent for every search to NASA would have self-funded for 1,000 years. because
Right.
Google has made so much money. People don't even realize this. This the other thing too is that the this is a very democratic thing. This goes back to Bill Clinton. Remember during the internet surge, they created that public-private hybrid thing, right? So now you have massive holding companies that oversee Google called Alphabet. That's not a publicly traded, that's a publicly traded company. But then underneath it are these private entities which have huge budgets and massive expenditures that you don't know what they actually are. Meta did the same thing. So you don't really know as much about Facebook and Instagram as you used to know because now Meta is this shield kind of hiding a lot of the stuff that they're doing. And that came out of the Clinton. That was a Democratic thing that we want to have these public-private hybrid company things. That was one of the banking reforms. Dodd-Frank Act kind of kept that going forward. These are the kind of things that you look at and go, well, how do these things? How do they change the way the banking stuff operates? Why did they do this? Why do they do that? Why do they extend this? Well, they have interests in those businesses too. A lot of times you'll see the politicians and business, they kind of walk a gray line. Not everybody. I'm not saying Barney Frank was a bad dude or Chris Dodd was a bad dude.
Also, Barney Frank's a bad dude.
But there is some weird stuff in the language of those laws that isn't so much protecting people as it is protecting these massive companies from having real oversight over them. And, thanks to the European Union, we know stuff about Google and Meta that we would never otherwise know because our FCC is not investigating anything. Not at all.
So, I mean, all they're doing is like Alphabet is the parent company. Google's still, Alphabet's publicly traded because it owns Google, right? They just formed a new parent company. And of course, they can have private, not publicly traded companies underneath, within its. But Dodd-Frank removed the wall for banks. We used to have deposit banks and investment banks, and now they are one and the same, which means that your bank is investing your savings, and if they lose it, or if there's a crash or some sort of run on Wall Street, that could be your money that goes away, it gets lost and that disappears, and that's what really changed everything.
It did.
That was the worst thing that ever happened.
It's such a bad law. It's stupid, really. It's truly a dumb law. And it allows big corporations like Google. So back in the day, a company like Google would have to had a savings account, a business savings account related to their income in one bank, and then their investment stuff in a different bank. They couldn't have them in the same bank. So that's another thing, this weird thing that took place. You couldn't just have you had all this money kind of merging into one place, general accounts and certain things. One of the things that I've learned from Leanne working at Hollywood as we're kind of going through how to build a company and how to do bookkeeping the right way versus doing bookkeeping on the back of an envelope, which is, I'm just saying that's where one of the things that she taught me about is the general ledger. So you got this big kind of all the money's in one place, and then you have these little lines. So when now the Google's private and Meta and Alphabet is publicly traded, Google is just one line on Alphabet's general ledger. So they don't have to tell you what exactly Google spends their money on, is what I'm saying. They just say that we spent X on Google. It's one of our private entities that we own underneath, and so there's less ability to see into what they're doing in there. And the same things happened with OpenAI. I don't know if you saw that they got the first pass through by the California banking regulator people or whatever to be able to have a side company that's a for-profit company beside the nonprofit company somehow, which doesn't make sense. How can a nonprofit own a profit? Right, that doesn't make any sense, but that's what they're able to do. And I was.
Well, I imagine what they're going to do is have there'll be a new parent company that owns both.
Yeah, there'll be a new parent company, but Sam Altman, who was hailed as a saint, literally, he's on the cover of Time magazine, all these other things. AI is going to change the world. We're going to give it away for free. He was bullshitting from the beginning. I said that back then. I was told by a bunch of people, no, they're going to give it away. OpenAI is going to be free. Go look at ChatGPT, people. You're paying for it already. You're already paying for it now. So they're already starting a subscription based service. They have advertising running on there. It was always a income driven thing, and there's a reason why Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates all invested in the same company together. When you see those three guys get together and do things, you should think, hey, they're trying to make money, not they're trying to save the world. They're not.
Well, I mean, this is getting in the weeds, but I mean, I think I'm not sure what the private end is going to do, but I mean, because they needed to make money doesn't mean it was necessary. I mean, all nonprofit is a company that doesn't pay out shareholders. That's it.
True. They also received over $100 billion in non-refundable grants.
Yeah.
100 billion. That's not a little bit of money. That's a lot of bit of money. And those are non-refundable grants that they got because they were a nonprofit. And they were able to apply for them through sam.gov. Those are government grants.
Yeah.
So 3 billionaires were able to get $100 billion out of the government for this one company. And now that one company is able to exercise the power of that 100 billion with a for-profit arm. That's a massive advantage to their company versus like if you and me wanted to start up This Week in Worcester AI, we would not have the advantage of $100 billion grant cycle. We would not.
Well, right, because all those grants have now been canceled. But
not those grants.
So you can't just, I mean, as a accounting mechanism, like you can't take money from the nonprofit and then shift it to the for-profit and pay that money out to shareholders. That's not going to work.
You're 100% right, Tom. But you know what you can do? You can develop technology within the nonprofit and then license it
to your
for-profit to sell it. That's how you do it. And so it's just that they basically the research money that they would have normally had to put in, which is why if you go look at Cisco is really upset about this, and they filed several lawsuits against OpenAI and other things because they have their own AI thing that they're doing, because they're saying it's not fair. We put in all this research and we spent our own money to do this research. You gave them money. It's a competitive disadvantage for companies like Cisco. I don't really care about them because Cisco has gotten plenty of government grants over the years too. So I don't want to hear them.
Yeah, I mean this happens in healthcare with NIH, with the National Institute of Health. NIH does all this low level, base level research that nobody would pay to do.
Exactly.
But they do it because out of the interest of science, and then it's used in all kinds of in all kinds of for-profit ways, basically for free. So we're subsidizing NIH to do work for corporations largely for free. That's an issue.
Yeah. And that we just have that in the AI thing. Yeah. And so
I mean, it's the same thing with bifocal lenses and styrofoam, et cetera, et cetera. The billions of things that have been invented at NASA is, if there was a return on that investment to create those things, the country would be in a whole different place.
The AI thing, the little provision in this bill that the Senate parliamentarian changed is a huge one. So you probably heard it. They were talking about one of the provisions of the big, beautiful bill was that states were not allowed to make a regulation against AI in it for 10 years. But the Senate parliamentarian said you can't do that. It violates the Byrd rule. The Byrd rule basically means that it would have to have 60 votes to pass. So if you can't do it, they usually take it out of the bill. They changed the language and she let it through. And now what the language says is this: if you're a state, so Tom, you be Delaware, and Delaware wants to access this $500 million grant pool, the only way you can get into that grant pool as a state is you're not allowed to regulate AI. So if you go look at OpenAI's press releases, what they have said is any state that doesn't do these regulations, OpenAI will now match whatever grant they get from the government. So it's such a blatant scheme for these companies, and it just blows my mind how easy it is. But this is what happens when these bills are affected by lobbyists. They have the money to pay lobbyists to get these people to put in a thing. I don't know that Congress knows what they did all the way. I don't know if they understand it 100%. I don't trust them to know as much as the guy who's making $50 million a year, who's being paid. You know what I mean?
So here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the thing. This is where it gets even more complicated. that this all used to make sense because, and I listen, I have very little use for Nancy Pelosi. But, when she said the thing about Obamacare that's been repeated a million times, you need to pass it so we can find out what's in it. It sounds terrible, but it actually makes total sense. Because it used to be, until recently, that, regulators and, hired people who have expertise in these things would do the implementation. They would write all the rules and it would go through a rulemaking process, right? And that's where the actual kind of the bread get cut, right? Like Congress is really in the business of creating pots of money to be spent on stuff. And how that money is going to be spent is somebody else's job, right? But then the Supreme Court last year, decided that the Chevron rule was wrong. And that was the rule that allowed and instructed courts to really defer to regulators and these other, we call them regulators, but they're essentially, these people that have the expertise in these fields that work at agencies, right? Hired people. And it said that that wasn't the case. And so we need to wait to see how that plays out, because more, are some of these bills now going to get taken to Congress and say they're doing things that aren't written by Congress. And the last thing we want these people in Congress to do is the actual work of implementation, right?
And we don't want them doing that
because they don't know what they're taught, and nor should they. Nor could anybody know all the things. Like, you have to know all the things, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a thing that anybody can do. So
that's why they have different committees, right? Because different representatives have different interests, so they work in different committees where their interests lie.
And that's why you have agencies that actually do the work.
Oh yeah, and so listen, how does this, for the people watching, how does this connect to Worcester? A perfect example is with the cable franchise agreement. Remember, we're talking about the city renegotiating with Charter Spectrum on the cable franchise agreement. Right now at the FCC, the cable division is gone. They fired everybody except for one guy. It's literally gone. They reassigned some lawyers from the rural broadband whatever the name of that law was, they put those lawyers underneath this guy. And the reason why they did that is because the federal government, under Brendan Carr, who's the FCC chairman, has made the determination that cable is obsolete, which is something I've been saying publicly here in Worcester. Cable is obsolete. So they're going to end support during this presidential administration. They're going to end support for cable franchise agreements for municipalities. Why does that matter to Worcester? Well, if the city manager decides he doesn't want to negotiate, he probably would get the wires back from Spectrum like 2 months later, and Spectrum would have to maintain it for the 18 months because that's what the statute says, right? So they'd have to maintain it, and in the meantime, we could explore municipal cable, municipal broadband options while Verizon continues their rollout of the full city fiber optic network, right? So that's what we're seeing happen in live. What happens though is that the reason why I think it'll happen, Tom, is that Spectrum loses that subsidy, because there's a subsidy for this process that they would get, and they don't get it anymore because Trump slashed the budget. Doge cut the budget for the FCC by a ton of money, so they're not going to spend it on Worcester. They're going to spend it on whatever their priorities are, and their priorities, if you go look at it, is broadband access in rural states. Massachusetts is not a rural state. We're not considered that. So they're going to go roll out fiber optics in Oklahoma. That's what they're going to go focus on. And that's what's going to be the turnout for the next 4 years. So that's why our city can't afford. And this is something I told publicly. I've talked about it a bunch of times. I said, if there's a Republican president, this is what's going to happen to the city of Worcester if we agree to that cable license again. We're going to get hosed. And that's why we need to pull out, and we need to realize as a city, cable is obsolete and we need to move in a different direction, which is probably a municipal broadband option. Doesn't mean it's the only option, but we need to have one to be a bulwark, especially for our senior citizens who they might end up getting all kicked off of cable at the end of this year. Anyways, they might all lose. Cable might be gone from the city in October. So and there might not be any option because Verizon's not going to offer cable. They're just going to offer a streaming package, and that's what every company is doing now, including Charter Spectrum. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to do it whether they have the agreement or not. They're going to shift everybody to a not a cable agreement, but a some kind of streaming package anyways. So these things, these federal things, they directly affect us every single day, every single day.
Lastly, want to touch on some stuff going on this for the remainder of the summer. You had a whole list of things.
Yeah, I do. I got a whole list. So there's a bunch of where does funding for PEG channels end up coming from? Oh, so real quick, let me answer that question from Sean. So PEG funding does not have to come from the cable franchise agreement. That's just what Worcester chose to do. There are, I think there's 200 and change cable franchise agreements still in effect in the state of Massachusetts. There's been a bunch of municipalities who have already pulled the plug, small towns, and that's starting to happen more and more. So municipalities are pulling the plug. They fund the PEG channels through the general fund for their municipality, right? Now, the amount of money we're talking about is not a huge amount of money. The city has made the mistake of attaching PEG channels to this cable franchise agreement for 30 years. Most other places have created a separate pool of funding or have helped, like WCCA, which is a local cable channel, have helped them get corporate sponsors. Now, Morrow, has gone on public, and talked about where's the money going to come from. And what is he talking about? He's talking about the money for him and his staff. The salaries are going to get cut if it's still attached to the franchise agreement. That's why the city of Worcester should set aside $1 million and pay the bill for the school department cable TV, the city cable TV, and WCCA. Just get it done, split it evenly, and all of their budgets are okay. If you look at the setup at Worcester Tech, it is an abomination that our school is that far behind on their school ability to broadcast things. That's stupid. Just in an emergency situation alone, you should be able to lock down all the schools with instantaneous communications, and they don't have that ability to do that broadcast. They don't, because of this silliness. And so we just need to fix it. And you've seen City Hall, you see the cameras and all the system there. Those folks don't have enough money. They're buying stuff secondhand, and they're bidding out to like cousins. They need help over there. And listen, Judy Warren, who directs the cable services department, when I was the chair of the commission, we didn't always agree with everything. But I will tell you this: she works really hard, and she has no budget, zero. She's got no budget. Give her the money. The city needs to stop dicking around with that pool of money. So the money should come from the city. That's my opinion.
And that won't happen.
So then the list of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, and just in general, I said this a couple of years ago, still believe it. Municipalities in general need to start looking at developing delivery of services on their own as a means to revenue.
Yeah. Right now, Tom, there is 9,000-ish accounts left for cable in the city of Worcester, about 9,000. Okay, so if you average bill is about $100, that's monthly, $100. So does anybody want to do the math with me? That's $900,000 in revenue a month. Even if you took the bill down to 50, that's $450,000 in revenue a month that you would now have coming into the city. You're telling me a small staff couldn't handle cable operations for $450,000? No, I know. City of Worcester, we like handing out those $300,000 paychecks, but somebody couldn't come in and manage that budget and deliver cable. By the way, most of the people have basic cable. They don't have every single thing because they're getting it all through streaming apps. Nobody pays for Disney through cable anymore. They get the Disney Channel. They get Disney Plus. If they don't pay for NBC stuff anymore, they get the NBC stuff. And a ton of people have switched over to YouTube TV because Verizon has a deal with YouTube TV, which I think that you save like $30 or $40 if you get Verizon Internet. You get YouTube TV for like $39.99, which I think it's like $70 or something normally. Yeah. So there's a deal in place with another company directly competitive with them right now. There's no reason for people to stay on Spectrum. So I think that the city needs to offer an alternative. Otherwise, all that revenue is just going to continue to go out the door, and you're missing out on it. And then you're not even delivering the basic services you're supposed to, which is, as much as I get that Morrow has this specific interest, a vested interest. WCCA does do a lot of cool stuff, and it should be funded. It's not. We're not talking about this massive bill. It's not a huge budget. Let's just fund it. It's right there. Why not take care of them? It doesn't make any sense. We're talking about 10 people, dude. We can't take care of 10 people, but we can make sure that all these people get their overtime pay for $250,000 a year. I don't want this episode to drift into our other subjects. But come on. Can't you go to 225 and we can throw Morrow a bone? Right?
And events this summer. Go.
All right, events. So listen, I wanted to say this. I feel like sometimes there's not a lot of enthusiasm because of all the other stuff that's going on. And it stinks because there are people that are doing good work in the city of Worcester. There really are. There are some people that are trying to do things. And it's not just the public facing ones, but some of the stuff that's cool. The Out to Lunch series that's being run by the Downtown Worcester Bid, which is not a city entity. It is a separate nonprofit, which is really the businesses downtown, right? They're doing great work. The team over there, Victoria Mariano, Alex Monaco, Lisa Malo, they are spectacular. They are really, really, really good. And they are putting together a really cool series of events, right? And I'm not just saying that because Manny is hosting it 3 times. I'm not saying that. It's really cool. I was down there. There's a farmer doing things. There's food trucks. There's music. It brings people out in the middle of the day in the summertime. It celebrates an area. It gives us something to do downtown. It's pretty cool, man. So go out and see those things every Wednesday, all the way until the end of August. You hit the Out to Lunch. No, I think it goes into September, Out to Lunch series. And then they also do the movies on the Common on Thursday nights. There's like 6 or 7 of them, but there's one next week where they play a movie, and they're playing the movie Spirited. I know it's Christmas in July, but the movie Spirited was filmed really in Worcester. A ton of it was filmed right here in Worcester, and so you could go see a movie that was filmed a lot in our city, and it's cool. Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. I worked on that movie when I was at Westerman. I did some prop stuff there, and it was a really cool project. So you should go check it out. But it's not just that. Next month you got. Oh, is it next month? Someone could correct me in the chat, but the Caribbean Festival is coming up, right? You have the you got the backpack drives start in August, right? There's a bunch of different ones. The African Coalition Festival is coming up. There's a ton of weekend events that are going to start to happen all the time. The Latin Festival. And man, if you're wanting to try something different, go to these events, man. They're fun. They're cool. They're different. They're unique and special. And so go check that out. We lost Start on the Street. We should support these other events that have been going on for years and years and years and years that maybe they happen to be from different cultures than us. The JMAC has a bunch of art stuff going on. The Worcester County Poetry Association, right, WCPA, you should check out they have a bunch of readings all over the city. White Room, The Raven. They have the Dirty Jaron Poetry Show every Monday night, right? There's a bunch of poetry stuff if you like that stuff. Also, there's a ton of concert stuff here in the city of Worcester. Go check it out. That's some cool stuff. And I really think it should be celebrated. And we should be meeting up there together and hanging out, right? So the number one goal is to get Tom out of his house. We got to get Tom out of his house.
No, leave me alone.
There's no city council meetings during the summer, right? So we need to get him out.
I'm hiding. Leave me alone. I'm not even shaving or nothing.
We need to socialize Tom and get him into the thing. We got to get Leanne out. Leanne's got to come out. Get Lynn, get Freddie, C, and Sean. We're gonna get Sean out. I seen Sean playing the I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal this, but I saw Sean playing the national anthem on his battle axe the other day on the 4th of July. It was epic. It was epic. We got to get more stuff like that out to celebrate the kind of local businesses, because we are seeing consistently small and medium-sized businesses. Oh, also Rockland Trust Plaza, Fam Jam. So Jeff Killebrew, he has that little section next to Polar Park. Every single I'm gonna say it wrong. I think it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. So if there's someone in the chat that can correct me, but I know that he has it like 3 days a week or something when the Woo Sox are in town. Go over there, man. They got stuff going on. They got different things. Go over to we've been doing trivia at Birch Street Bread on Thursday nights. And there's other ones around the city. Let's do some fun stuff. There's some cool local businesses here in the city of Worcester. Different Sean, sorry about that. I assume. I don't know. I don't know if he's tricking me or not. I don't know. So we should do something cool like that. I think we should celebrate the things, because that's really how I believe we will change the way that the city does things, is if we celebrate and we vote with our feet, really, by going to these places and supporting these places. Speaking of WCCA, go down. They have a training thing, right? And this will shock Morrill, because Morrill thinks I'm against them, but I'm not. Go down to WCCA and sign up for free to get training to become a broadcaster. And if you do the training, you can have your own show on WCCA. Do you want your own TV show? Freddie Nathan was on TV the other day. So go have your own show on WCCI. Birch Street is at 6:30 on Thursdays, Freddie. But show up at 6 because it's packed in there. So you can come sit with me and Leanne. Sometimes C goes, Sam Sachs goes, Tommy Dwyer's come down, Maria came down, Kayla came down. We've had a bunch of fun times at the trivia nights, which is fun. We haven't won yet though, but we did get a loaf of bread though. We got a loaf of bread.
Hey, it's something.
Yeah.
And with that, it is now time for John's favorite part of the show.
It's again. Oh, you've interacted with him in the past. So
we have a Shawnee identification error, controversy breaking out in the chat.
Yeah, we don't want to falsely accuse someone, but we do want to make sure that we point out every week. Tom says that it's only my favorite part of the show, and all of you know that is complete disinformation and misinformation from the king over here. I don't know which side he's on my side of the screen, whatever it is. You got to know that this is Tom's favorite thing, and you know what we're gonna do. It was 4th of July, dude. We got to do. What's your favorite part of the 4th of July? I'm giving you an expanded room to do this, right? Expanded room. You can mention food. You could say sparklers. You could say fireworks. You can say whatever you want. What is your favorite thing about the 4th of July?
Waiting for whoever it is that is blowing these stupid things off in the middle of the night and making my dog bark to blow their hand off.
That's your favorite part.
No, I mean, I'm gonna have to go generally food. I mean, anything, holidays means food, and I like food. I'm closing in rapidly on being a fat guy. So,
did you have a hot dog?
I didn't.
By the way, what food is American? Like really? What can you name a food that's really just American?
I mean, hamburgers.
From hamburger is in Germany, from Hamburg, right? Give me another one.
I don't know. I mean, we really came here not that long ago. I mean,
So anyways.
Everything is American food because we're Americans, and that means everything is everything.
It's easy. It is hot dogs, even though those are Frankfurters and those are from Frankfurt. But it's a hot dog in a bun with cheese and mustard. You got to have cheese and mustard. Although I had a taco dog. Did you ever had a hard shell taco dog? It's another thing.
I don't like endeavor to put hot dogs in things,
So I had the hard shell taco, Swiss cheese with the dog in there. Life changing. It'll make
if you are gonna have a hot dog though, that must have both ketchup and mustard on it.
No ketchup. I'm anti-ketchup. Ugh. Sweet tomato sauce. Ugh. Ugh. I'm against it. Yes, I'm a cheese on the dog guy. I'm cheese on the dog all day long. 100%. You got to have cheese on the dog. But that's not my favorite part about the 4th of July. My favorite part about the 4th of July is now the never-ending online controversies related to the 4th of July. I enjoy them very much, listening to people argue with each other over the most innocuous of things. But in particular, what's his name? Kelsey's brother. So the guy, the Eagles football player, he said something like, 4th of July, isn't this the time we can all come together? And he got lit up like a Christmas tree on online, and he was just getting berated by it. The best part was it wasn't like one-sided beration. So all the liberal, folks online were hammering him like, how can you, celebrate this when there's people going through this? Legitimate point. But then the Republican people are like, how can you want to be united with this other group? he didn't get a break at all. There's no breaks, so there's no patriotism left in America, and so yellow
I just
mustard.
like the
Still
hot water is awesome.
I'm a yellow mustard guy too. Definitely a yellow mustard guy all the way.
Me too. Yeah, I could do onions, but yeah, I don't know how you could like hamburgers too. Ketchup, mustard, hot sauce.
So if you want to get something that'll clean you out, it's the chili dog, the loaded one over at Coney Island. That'll take care of business. If you're struggling with using the bathroom, just go over to Coney Island and get one of those dogs.
Okay, and with that,
by the way, that's to their credit because they're really tasty going down, but they'll also help you take care of business. Don't eat 4 of them because if you eat 4 of them, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
You should probably never eat 4 hot dogs in one sitting.
But I don't know, man. I think I had 3. I had 3 hot dogs in taco shells.
I mean, I'm not saying I won't eat them. I'm just saying that they're terrible.
I'm gonna make them for you someday, and then your life will change. It'll be better. Because
again, I'll eat them because I'm a glutton. But no human probably should eat them. Like it's just a thing you probably should eat.
No, well, so we're all beef hot dogs, right? We're not going with the Soylent Green. I think Sean said Soylent Green in the dogs. We need to get the all beef. And I like the uncured dogs too. Uncured dogs are much better for you than the cured ones. The cured ones get all kinds of who knows what they go through to turn them into that shape. How they get it there, I don't know, dude. I don't know. But the uncured dogs look like they're supposed to look. They're like gray, kind of. At least those ones, you know what's in them.
So next week we will have an agenda to yell about all the things that aren't on it that should be.
That's right. We'll be upset about it
before the show on Sunday. So we'll be previewing the first city council meeting in 100 years and see what it is, the things that are of importance to councilors after their little layoff here, their summer breakish.
Yeah, we're slacking too, Tom. Look at the time. We're about to shut it down early.
We are.
I mean,
this is supposed to be an hour show, and it goes 2 hours most of the time. So we'll take a shorter one when we get it.
Yeah.
So next week we'll do that, and of course whatever else happens this week. I am on Hank Stoltz show every Wednesday at 8 a.m.
Oh, and on the Chronicles of the Commonwealth, the latest episode, I'm on there with Hank and Ben and Randy Feldman.
That's the round table, isn't it?
Yeah, the round table thing. I was the one on cable. So I think it runs.
For right. So John was also on the show. It's up on Radio Worcester's site. John was on the round table on Tuesday because I'm Wednesday, and is also on the latest episode on Spectrum TV.
They brought me on there just to hammer the city manager. That's the only reason I'm on there.
That you were on Spectrum TV is fantastic, by the way.
Isn't it great that Spectrum TV put me on? Isn't that cool, everybody? So the TV station doesn't have anything to do with the big corporate overlords. Those guys are local kind of Spectrum.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I don't have anything against those guys. It's not their fault.
Yeah. All right. So 8:35 every Sunday. We will be here next Sunday. And until then, we'll try to screw it up less next time. Have a great week.
By the way, if you want a Hollywood shirt, you can buy it. Go online. Go on Hollywood.com. Hollywood with 3 O's. Right? Buy Leanne's t-shirts. Get on there.